Item 135, receiving a PowerPoint presentation from the EBR PPRC Medical Task Force report on healthcare challenges in the Parish Jail by Councilwoman Charna Banks. Councilwoman, I'm just asking how long you think your presentation is. I know we got 17 minutes and we'll have to extend the meeting if we know, and I'm not trying to put you off or nothing. So I didn't know how long your presentation might be.
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. Council members, I know that we're going to have to probably extend, and one vote does not extend it, so.
Councilman, point of order.
Yes, sir.
I will just tell you, council members, I hate to do this because I try to stay for all these meetings as long as I can. I have a family obligation that I cannot stay the entire past 8.
Okay, let me ask this
short,
out of respect. Let me ask, out of respect for you guys. So your presentation is 20 minutes. Do you have questions in addition to your presentation?
I personally don't have any questions.
Have people? What's the item? How many people signed up to speak?
There's no people to speak, and so.
So can you do it in 15 minutes? If
Except Mr. Alums, I think he wanted to speak. I think you.
Yeah, I don't want to have to cut it if Dwight can't stay.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Our time is limited.
That's what we're trying to clarify. So if he's already said he can't extend it, so if one person objects, we cannot extend the meeting. So I don't want to cut you guys time off. I'm just trying to get clarity. Do you want to do it tonight, or do you want to come back to give everybody time to speak?
Due to the urgency of the matter, I would like to present tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, he just said he's fine. He have to leave. We still have a quorum.
Okay.
No.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
He's not objecting.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would like to see the presentation. I don't know if it's up somewhere else. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Cherie Thomas with the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Coalition, and I will make this quick, but there is a huge urgency of the issue due to the deaths that have occurred. We've spent about a year and a half reviewing different policies and procedures and practices that have occurred inside of the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. We are a task force of citizens. We are a citizen-based task force, and we have collective, next slide. And we have collective information, and we want to make sure that the actual citizens that are there, next slide, the citizens that are within the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison are provided adequate health care and know that those individuals will or should be returning back into the actual general population, follow their detainee. Throughout this presentation, you will hear me refer to the detainees and the inmates as citizens because they are still citizens no matter where they are. Next slide.
Just take your time. I know we'll have 7 people because I know you waited. And I mean, I'll stay, and I think we have 7 people that will stay. So just take your time, and we'll extend the meeting. We'll make a motion in a few minutes. So take your time.
Thank you so much. The presentation will refer to the individuals that are there, the detainees and inmates as citizens. As I currently stated, they are still citizens. Throughout our review, we have done observation, we have read policy, we have reviewed the contract. We want to make sure that everyone understands that there is no such thing as prison health care. The individuals that are there and the citizens that are there should be provided the same type of health care no matter where they are. If I were to break my arm in Hawaii versus Louisiana, the treatment will still be the same. And we want to make sure that the individuals do not receive different treatment for their health care because of their location. Next slide. Again, I am Cherie Thomas. I am one of the co-chairs for the Prison Reform Coalition. I'm a healthcare consultant. I've worked for 21 years in my field doing business systems analysis, reviewing contracts. I have experience with governmental regulations as well as compliance. So in our actual task force, we have multiple individuals with high-level expertise. So there are individuals that do provide external, to answer one of the questions that the council had, there are individuals that have expertise to provide external audits outside of the actual compliance, the accreditation that's done. In the actual 5 months that we spent going back and forth to the prison, doing prison tours, we observed the actual individual interactions. We spoke with correct health employees as well as deputies as well as the warden, asking questions and querying, next slide, asking questions and querying to understand their policies. We were not provided with written policies because, as it states in the contract, the policies are proprietary information of Correct Health and the city parish. Therefore, we were not provided with written policies. So in our review, we did a overall visual review of the actual observations that we made. And so we want to make that clear that we did not get any written policies. Next slide. Some of the challenges that we identified were the actual booking or intake. There was, on average, and stated by the warden, the average time in receiving an inmate is 20 minutes. That was stated in the previous discussion. In that 20 minutes, there's a screening and a medical clearance that's provided. There is a mental health, dental, and medical screening that's done by an LPN. The LPN then provides orders or recommendations for additional services that could possibly be needed for the individual. In regular traditional healthcare settings, LPNs do not have the obligation, and it is not within their scope of work to provide any orders or recommendations. That is not the scope of practice of an LPN. And so we want to make sure that it's identified that there's a problem with the scope of practice and the delineation of duties, as well as the terminology that's listed. Next slide. So in that 20 minutes, we have a medical clearance, a screening for mental health, a screening for medical health, a screening for dental health, and fingerprinting. And so if we were in a traditional healthcare setting, I'm sure many of the people that's here have gone to the doctor's office before as a new patient, and you realize that there's no way that a screening can be done for mental, medical, and dental within 20 minutes as a new patient. So we pose that as a risk for the individuals that are there. We've also discovered that LPNs and RNs are used interchangeably as nurses. LPCs and LCSWs are used interchangeably as counselors or social workers. Also, screening and evaluations, next slide, are used interchangeably. And that is a huge issue with terminology. Terminology is very important because it changes the whole scope of practice and what should be done and what is done. Another one of the challenges that's identified is there is inadequate staff that's available. The actual psychiatrist, per the contract, is stated to be there 8 hours weekly. Also, too, in the actual review, we've noticed that there is no infirmary. Next slide. There is no infirmary that's there. The actual medical ward or the special needs unit does not have actual infirmary capabilities, which means per the contract, it states that emergency services are provided, but there is nowhere to provide emergency services. Also in the actual contract, and on average from those 8 hours of the, and it says MD, but it's actually a psychiatrist that's there for 8 hours per week. Also too, in the contract, it says a nurse practitioner is stated to be there for 24 hours per week. When we did our actual observation, there were 2 LPCs that were there. There were no LCSWs. We also had a social worker that was there with us, and it was clearly identified that the individuals there were not social workers. They were LPCs. We're not sure if the social workers come at midnight or on the midnight shift, but during the tours that we actually went on, and I went on personally over 5 tours there, each time those same individuals were there and they were LCSWs. So on an average, we average the population is 1,323 that's currently housed on average in the actual prison. When speaking with Warden Grimes, he did say over 50% of those individuals do need mental health services. Next slide. And so that pose as a issue for us, because if that many individuals need mental health services, we definitely need some type of infirmary for those individuals to go to receive those services. Next slide. Something else that was uncovered in our review was the actual judge's orders. Judges are providing requests for mental health assessments or mental health evaluations. There were two totally different things. However, due to the terminology, different things are being provided to the actual judges. So what they actually need may or may not be covered. So in that 8-hour time span per week that the psychiatrist is slated to be there, he then also has to possibly provide mental health assessments. And if anyone works in mental health that's here today, doing a full mental health evaluation could take over an hour within itself, which takes the psychiatrist away for the small time that he's there from treating the actual inmates that are currently housed in the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. Also, too, in this request, it poses an ethical issue because the psychiatrist is the same individual that's treating the individuals that's there, that's doing the evaluation. Therefore, the psychiatrist, if deemed, given a bad review or states to the judge that that inmate is not warranted for release or parole, then that psychiatrist still has to treat that actual citizen that's in there throughout their actual treatment that's there. So it poses as a conflict of interest. Again, I'm going to state the National Correctional Health Care that everyone has been quoted. I think there's a book that's there that has the standards that's there. That is the same entity that has provided the actual accreditation. So when we talk about the accreditation and the actual standards that are there, they're standards that are followed for national correctional facilities, and in those standards there are many conflicts of what they are accrediting that's there. So for a point of clarification, I want to talk about a screening. Oh, next slide. Maybe I'm 3 behind. So a screening is simply identifying the actual, for clarifying the interchangeable words. A screening is basically reviewing and identifying any healthcare concerns that may pose as a risk to the actual citizen that's there. The screening is a strategy to identify and look. So in a screening, the only thing that you're doing is looking. Going to the next slide, in an assessment. Yeah.
Not to interrupt you 1 second, I'm going to make a motion to extend the meeting for 30 minutes. You don't have to answer. I know you got to leave. So a motion by the chair, second by Watson. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. In an assessment, the actual individual that's doing the assessment, which should be an actual RN, a psychiatrist, a physical physician, or a nurse practitioner. In the assessment, they're interacting with the patient. They're asking them their past medical history. They're physically assessing them from head to toe. And any evaluation, next slide, an evaluation is when they're physically touching them, doing an actual exam. So to use the word screening, assessment, and evaluation interchangeably holds a huge risk. However, there is some education that may need to occur in writing the new contract, as well as educating some of the actual staff that's there, as well as possibly city parish individuals. Next slide. The actual assessments that are performed should be performed by an RN. There is a standard by the National Correctional Healthcare Board that says that a paramedic can then do an assessment in place of an RN, but an LPN should not be doing an assessment. An evaluation should be done by a mid-level provider, which means it should be done by a nurse practitioner, a psychiatrist, or a doctor. Next slide. So as I was saying, terminology is very important. Something that I put here that's clear as day, an orange is not an apple. And that's what is referred to in this actual contract, and that's what's being done interchangeably that we have discovered. Next slide. Next slide. In regards to the reporting measures, clearly in the contract it states that the reporting will be done when agreed upon by both parties. There are no clear delineation of the reporting measures. As we have seen and discussed, there are discrepancies in how the information is obtained. There are inaccurate information that's listed here in regards to the number of deaths that's reported. There's discrepancies as to how the physical assessments are not done within 14 days that's standard in the National Correctional Healthcare Standard. And so if we follow the National Correctional Healthcare Standard that has accredited this prison, then we should follow all standards and not just the standard for the accreditation. And if we are following those standards, then there are some changes that needs to be made in how the reporting is occurring, how the reporting is delivered, who is actually reporting the information, and having clear measures that are reported. So in our challenges, next slide. In our challenges that we have seen that mental health is a major issue. Again, while we were there was no LCSW that was there. It was only LPCs. Counselors more so focus on the emotional and behavioral therapy for support, where social workers have a more broader scope and they focus on the actual well-being and the social environment. And I'm sure we can all say that an individual citizen going into a prison for the first time or maybe a reoffender, there is a change of their social environment. Therefore, social workers definitely are needed inside of the prison. Next slide. Solitary confinement, as it states by the National Commission of Correctional Health, it states that a juvenile, and I quote, juveniles, mentally ill, and pregnant individuals should be excluded from the solitary confinement for any duration. This is the same accrediting body that has accredited the actual East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. Well, there are multiple instances that we have reviewed, next slide, where individuals that have disabilities are put in confinement for lack of better policies. There are individuals that have physical handicaps that are put in confinement due to lack of better policies. And I want to make sure that we understand who all has been affected by the actual deaths that have occurred in the prison. And there has been no discrimination of the type of people that have died in the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. We've had a 17-year-old African-American male and a 72-year-old Caucasian male that have died in the prison. So I like to make a clear note that there is a problem and we have a problem. And on the first slide, I want to make sure that you understand that we're not here to just identify the problem. We're here to request solutions. Next slide. So if we are all here and understand that there's a problem, first thing we need to do is understand that we cannot use the same mentality to solve the problem of how it was created. Next slide. So the goals of the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Task Force is to identify what services are needed in conjunction with the city parish to be able to address how those needs can be met. We are here and our goals are to assist in assigning and understanding the appropriate staff and resources that's needed to be able to function effectively for those citizens that we are housing. Also, too, we need to create monthly reports and measures, and they need to be clearly identified. Our goal is to improve the quality of care and literally save lives in the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. We're asking for transparency. Next slide. We're asking for the removal of Correct Health. And in the interim, we'd like to have an external audit performed of Correct Health. We'd also like an investigation of the contract and any conflict of interest that may occur of how the contract was obtained. We would like a conduction of a facility needs assessment done for the parish prison prior to the RFP being written. We want to make sure in that RFP that we have specific quality measures that's identified. We want to make sure that they have, and there are clear delineations of how many individual staff are needed. We would like to make clear note that it is a clear issue with the psychiatrist only being there 8 hours a week with over 650 individuals on average needing the services of mental health. So we also understand that there are other community resources that are out there that are already performing the work. We want to identify those community resources that are already there and be able to utilize those community resources. There is no need in recreating the wheel if there's already a solution there. We're asking that all of this be done in transparency in front of, with the help of the citizens of this parish, in selecting a new healthcare provider to hold them accountable in their processes, their procedures be made public with oversight, with an external compliance officer. As you can see today, incarcerated citizens cannot call 911. It is our obligation to protect them, provide them safety, as well as help. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please, we only have 27 minutes, so we need to move. And as far as there's a public hearing, anybody wants to speak on item 135?
Yeah, I was just going to, I'm also from the coalition. I was just going to follow up with a couple quick notes about numbers in addition to Sherry's comments. So my name is Michael Cahoon. I'm an organizer with the Promise of Justice Initiative. We're a statewide New Orleans-based nonprofit. We seek to make positive change in the criminal legal system, and I'm also a member of the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Medical Task Force. I just want to say that representatives from PJI and the coalition presented to this body over a year ago about our report investigating the deaths in the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. And I'm here today to stress that this crisis is ongoing in the parish prison. What is happening is not normal and is totally out of sync with similar facilities around the state and the country. There are two things that I'd like to call attention to that I think are really relevant to what Cherie just said. The first is around numbers, and I want to say something about the numbers of deaths in the parish prison real fast.
I just want to make sure we're not repeating ourselves because I don't have time and I've got other people who want to speak. Okay?
So I just want, calling attention something about the numbers while recognizing that each number is a family devastated, someone who's taken from the community, a life that's lost, and they represent people who have value, worth, and dignity. And so in a statement made to the media on 9/25/2019, the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office said, the mortality rate at East Baton Rouge Parish Prison is well below the national average. Those that state otherwise, by which I assume they mean us, are not taking into account that Parish Prison does not have a static population and has thousands of inmates that come and go annually. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics Deaths and Custodies Reporting Program 2000 to 2013, which is what you were referencing, on average, 137 inmates reportedly died nationwide per 100,000 inmates. That's 0.137%. When you compare this to statistics at East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, taking into account the number of inmates moved in and out of prison annually, you will see that for every year between 2010 and 2017, the percentage is well under that. And they go through different years and they say different percentages that are under that, which all sounds good, except the math is fundamentally incorrect, skewed, manipulated, use whatever term you want. The sheriff rightly cited the Bureau of Justice Statistics report, which I have here, and it seems like you have a copy of, that the national average is indeed 137 deaths per 100,000 people in jails. However, the report says clearly, and I'm quoting, mortality rates are based on the average daily population. Average daily population is estimated by taking the average of January 1 and December 31 inmate population counts. And they make no distinction. If someone's in your custody and they die, you don't get points if you got into a hospital first. They still died.
If you can please wrap it up, you got 5 seconds.
And so I just want to say that if you actually do the same methodology that is used by the Department of Bureau of Justice Statistics, the actual rate is 381 deaths per 100,000, which is triple the national average, and it has been for years.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item 135. We don't have much time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each speaker 2 minutes because I don't have a whole lot of time. So, Reverend Anderson.
Again, good evening. I want to just, again, thank the community so much for stepping up. And I've said it in private, I've said it in public. I would like for this council to spend as much time and due diligence chasing the health care of our citizens that happen to be in the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison as they do following the East Baton Rouge Council on Aging and the library. I want those contracts to be just as studious, just as monitored, just as concerned, because unlike the library, which does fine work, and just like the Council on Aging that takes care of our senior citizens, we are judged by what we do for the least of them. And so for those whom would say that where somebody's final breath was taken is indicative of what happened to them, I would direct you, with all due respect, Councilman, to the lawsuits that are public knowledge. I would direct you to any of the numerous families that are here right now that can tell you for a fact. I would direct you to the O'Quinn family. I would direct you to the Claiborne family. I would direct you to Mikhail Todd's family. I would direct you to Jonathan Fano's family. I would direct you to your own attorneys who can tell you about the lawsuits and the settlements that routinely come before this council and are approved. Thank you so much to Councilwoman Banks for the due diligence of always standing and at least giving an airing to this. But I would say with all sincerity, we don't have to do it this way. We can be better. We should be better. Every day, and I am not the only one, every day I get texts and phone calls and messages from families in crisis because their family member is in there.
Can you please wrap it up?
And so I would say the same way that this council spent numerous minutes discussing something from a neighboring parish, that the time that it took to have this discussion, be it at the end of the day, is more than worthy, and this conversation is not over. Thank you so much.
Mr. Lum? Mr. Lum, do you want to come up? Folks, I'm giving everybody, I can't go past 8:30.
It's just,
We're done.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Edward Allen, and I'm a member of Together Baton Rouge and a member of the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. And we're here to support these efforts to shed light on and address these long-standing issues at the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, including 41 deaths since 2011. We ask that, we realize that about 90% of these prisoners are being held pre-trial and without the ability to post bail. Many of these deaths have taken place before that person had even their day in court. We ask the council to do its due diligence to ensure that the safety of those held in East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's not that I don't want to. By the law, I can't go past 8:30. It's not by me, just by law. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi. Okay, my name is Jennifer Harding. I'm here actually speaking on behalf of Voice of the Experience, also called VOTE. We are an organization founded by and led by formerly incarcerated people, their families, and their allies, and we stand today in support of the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Coalition. I want to echo what Michael said. This is a crisis. What is happening in this jail is not normal. It is well beyond what is acceptable anywhere else in this state or in this country. There is a culture in our jail of dehumanization that has contributed to these deaths, and there is a culture among the decision makers who have the power to change this of turning a blind eye. The house is on fire, it is burning down, and people are dying. And y'all are standing around passing buckets of water saying, I wish we knew what to do. Enough is enough. 41 people have died. Enough is enough. What is it going to take for one of your family members, one of your loved ones to die there before we take action? 60% of voters that came out to support that bridge center tax said that it is a priority for people to stop dying in this jail. What is it going to take for this to change? It is enough. And I'm just going to say this. I have come here with this coalition, and we have begged for your compassion. We have come here and we have given you numbers and talked about the bottom line, what the financial cost of this is. We are here to tell you that VOTE knocked on 50,000 doors in this city this last election, and we are still in contact with all of these people, and this is an issue of importance. So some of y'all may not be coming back, so maybe you don't care about this issue, but this isn't going away. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, public hearing. This one. Give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Renee Smith, and as you can see, I'm with VOTE, but I have also been in the community for over 50 years advocating. I've been in the community ever since when Gordon Curry and other members was on the council. And you can look at the pictures and see. So that council started privatizing. When it started privatizing, we started being affected in the community. They privatized the garbage trucks. A lot of family members lost jobs, and then drugs came in our community. They started going this way, that way, every way. It went down. You all have continued to privatize. You're privatizing stuff for the prisoners, so we're getting deaths. You give out money to all these private corporations. They do not be accountable at all. So I want to know, where is the money going? But we want to tell you, we're going to know where our vote is going to go. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Brandy Abear. I just wanted to speak as someone who has personally experienced the prison system. I was imprisoned 5 times after breaking up with an with a police officer, my ex. And I can tell you that the lady who stood here and talked about that contract spoke lies. I was diagnosed with a mental disorder prior to getting into the prison system, and first off, the booking process, like, no one evaluated me. No one checked me out medically, physically, mentally. No one does any of that. You all get a generic brand of medicine if anything is wrong with you. It's just basically one for all. And when I expressed my fear, because not that I'm some saint or anything, but I was a pretty good kid before meeting this police officer, and I had never even seen the outside of a prison system. So I didn't want to be in general population, and you're just in isolation. So there's no help in the prison system, truthfully. The food in front of me, I had no clue what it was even made out of, and then walking from building to building, you're looking at your lunch and your breakfast outside being swamped with flies. Like, it stays out there for hours. So honestly, it was pretty hurtful to hear her sit here and talk about that contract, and to know that I, someone who truthfully didn't deserve the punishment, it's heartbreaking, honestly, to be in there with, like they said, people who are committing misdemeanors, who it could be some of y'all's teenage kids who just didn't want to sign a traffic ticket.
You can please wrap it up, please.
And so that's the treatment that they're getting as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public.
Am I permitted to speak again?
Yeah, you had 2 minutes.
I'll make it very quick. I know everyone's in a rush to go, so I'll make this as quick as I can. Thank you again for having me. Thank you, everyone, for your stories tonight. That's very, it gives a very visceral experience to a lot of numbers, and I want to get to something like that, but I want to say some numbers first. So in the presentation by the Prison Reform Coalition, they spoke of how we have underserved inmates because we don't have enough staff, or they're switching roles. A private contractor was hired to look into the Parish prison and found that we have 61% of the psychiatric staff hours of comparable jails in the United States. And on top of that, the way we treat mentally disabled or mentally ill prisoners is so terrible that they said, quote, isolation units transformed into de facto inpatient mental health wards were woefully inadequate physical environments for the most unstable mentally ill. And if you want to know more about maybe that this isn't just a East Baton Rouge problem, that it's a Correct Health problem or a private industry problem, whatever it might be, I would encourage you to find the common difficulties and find these common violations, because Correct Health has seen deaths, misdiagnoses, and misplacement all across the South. Read an article in the Atlanta Magazine or a Reuters special report that's titled Death in Politics, Royal, a Georgia Jail, or a Macon Telegraph article about a jail in Macon that was similarly administered by Correct Health. Because, I mean, y'all probably know these stories, but there are prisoners with paper gowns instead of cloth gowns because of the risk of suicide, and they're left without sheets in their rooms. One prisoner one detainee tried to squeeze himself into the plastic sheet on his own bed to stay warm. Others have been refused medication or taken off it by the medical staff. Yes, sir. And as a result, they have fallen ill, or they didn't receive insulin, or they suffered a clot from improper restraints. Right. So I would ask you to
Thank you, sir.
That. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Carter, and I'm with the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison Reform Coalition. And just really quickly, I want to say that as you begin this process, I want to make sure that we're all clear that there currently exists really serious and really important conflicts of interest. We know that Correct Health has given campaign donations to the current sheriff, and I think we need to be really transparent about what we are demanding from healthcare providers who are responsible for providing healthcare for our most vulnerable citizens, who are poor people charged with crimes, who, if they had resources, wouldn't be in that jail in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council members, we got 12 minutes, so Councilwoman Wicker, if you can.
The only comment I was going to make was I wanted to just thank the young lady that did the presentation. I thought that she, coming back and having, because that was going to be my question, out of all the information, what were the asks? And so it's complimentary that when we have organizations that come up and have a lot of conversation, being able to say, okay, this is actually what they're asking for, meant a lot to me as a council member, because I can follow what you're actually asking for. So you did a good job, and your pearls are really cute, by the way.
All right, Councilwoman Banks. We're limited on time, so if you can just.
I got 4 minutes. All right, thank you, everyone who's been here. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure working with y'all. Y'all like phenomenal. I wanted to say again, trying to reiterate that location of death does not excuse parish prison. If you're shot in this and you died out laying the memorial, you still were shot here. So that's number one. That has no bearing at all. Causation is the problem that we are concerned about. The sheriff and the warden. So we met with the mayor, the coalition, the sheriff, and Correct Health. And I have to say, in all of those things, the only person who, for the most part, is just totally making excuses and won't accept any responsibility is the sheriff and the warden. There's always excuses about how wonderful they are and what a wonderful job. And this isn't about anyone trying to preserve who they are, their name, their reputation, their character. This is about us all coming together saying that this is a problem, let's work together. So my ask is that the sheriff and the warden would put down their pride and their desire to be wonderful and just say open-armedly, what is it that I could do, and I'm ready to do it, and not use a parish prison physical location as being an excuse, because it is important that we get these things straight so that we won't be putting old wine in a new flask. And so that is why we're working to get all this done. The Bridge Center, when we brought the Bridge Center, the people of this parish got duped with the Bridge Center. I said it then, I say it now. When we dealt with San Antonio, the Bridge Center was part of the solution within their prison center. When we went to the Bridge Center, we also visited their jail. There was linkage. So, I agree with our pro tem who's talking about all the money. None of the money set aside in the Bridge Center goes to parish prison. That could be the infirmary. Those are some of the things that when that contract, not only is Correct Health a bad contract, the Bridge Center is a bad contract. Not only was Correct Health given without an RFP, the Bridge Center was given out without an RFP. And so those are systematic problems within government that until we are boldly and say, I'm going to do right, I don't care what it costs me, those are the problems that will continue. We're not going to stop. If I have to bring an item every month, and they don't want me to do this, regarding parish prison, we're going to shed a line on everything that's going on in that prison from end to end. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilwoman Collins-Lewis.
So very quickly, the report, I want to know if we can get a copy of the report that was given, the PowerPoint presentation that was given. Okay, so Ashley said she's going to email it to us. But again, if we never admit that we're sick, we can never get healed. And so we know that there are things wrong in Parish Prison. If everybody wants to point fingers at everybody else, and nobody really wants to sit down at one place and come up with recommendations for the good of all, and those are the people that are in the prison. Those are the people that we're talking about, the people that are incarcerated in that hellhole that we call Parish Prison. So if we're never willing to come to the table, it's not going to help if the sheriff doesn't come to the table, the warden, if they continue to say everything's okay up here, we're never going to get to a solution. So everybody has to be willing to come together and figure out what is it that we can do, because we all sit here tonight and we all know that something has to be done before anything else happens in Parish Prison. So the young lady, I've also told this to Reverend Anderson, the recommendations that you guys gave tonight, or the defects that you guys found, a lot of those things need to be put in the RFP, so there needs to be a communication with the mayor or whoever is going to write the RFP that's going to go back out for this contract to be renewed. A lot of the things that we've talked about in this place tonight needs to be a part of that RFP to make sure that whoever is selected can provide the services that we know are needed at Parish Prison. And I'm going to call it for a motion to accept the report.
We have a motion to accept report from Collins Lewis, second by Raka. Are there any objections? Seeing none,